They said I wasn't meant to be a mother. And somewhere between the 3rd miscarriage and the 1,000th prayer, I started to believe them. I stayed quiet when the doctor delivered another negative test. I stayed composed when my best friend announced her 2nd pregnancy at lunch. Even when my own mother suggested I just accept God's plan, I said nothing. But this story isn't about what they took from me. It's about what I found in the waiting. And what happened when I stopped asking permission to exist. This one's for my warriors, for the women who've been called broken, barren, or blessed with other purposes. You are more powerful than they'll ever comprehend. So please, don't scroll, because stories like mine, they're why we never stop believing in miracles. My name is Sarah, and for 9 years, I lived in the space between hope and heartbreak. I got married at 24, glowing with possibility. I wanted what every little girl dreams of: a white picket fence, Sunday morning pancakes, and tiny hands reaching for mine in the dark. The first year, everyone said to enjoy being newlyweds. By year 2, they asked when we'd start trying. By year 4, they stopped asking altogether. We tried everything. Ovulation strips that turned my bathroom into a chemistry lab. Dozens of them lined up on the counter like tiny soldiers in a war I wasn't winning. Fertility treatments that cost more than our honeymoon. Draining our savings account, one failed cycle at a time. I remember the first IVF consultation. The doctor spoke in percentages and statistics while I sat there calculating how many years of David's salary we'd need to gamble on a maybe. $28,000 for a 35% chance. Those numbers haunted my dreams. The hormone injections came with instructional videos that made it look easy, but they didn't show you how to steady your hands when you're injecting hope directly into your stomach. They didn't mention that the bruises would bloom purple and yellow, making my torso look like a battlefield. Acupuncture sessions where I lay still for an hour, hoping needles could fix what felt fundamentally broken inside me. The practitioner, a gentle woman named Lynn, would whisper about energy flow and blocked pathways while I stared at the ceiling and wondered if ancient medicine could heal modern heartbreak. And then, finally, 2 pink lines. I remember staring at that test, hands trembling. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd taken the test 3 minutes early because I couldn't wait any longer. And there it was, faint but unmistakable. I whispered a prayer of gratitude, so quiet, I wasn't sure God could hear it. I woke David by placing the test on his nightstand. He blinked at it for 10 seconds before his face broke into the widest smile I'd seen in years. We called our parents at 7 a.m., too excited to wait for a reasonable hour. We picked out names, Emma Rose if it was a girl, James David if it was a boy. We believed, just for 8 precious weeks, that our waiting was over. I started a pregnancy journal. Page 1. Today we found out you're coming. Daddy cried. Mommy cried. We've been waiting so long for you. I never wrote page 2, but at 10 weeks, I bled. And just like that, the nursery we'd painted in our minds went dark. It started as spotting on a Wednesday morning. I called the doctor's office, voice shaking, and the nurse said in that practiced calm tone, "A little spotting can be normal. Come in if it gets heavier." By Thursday afternoon, I was sitting in an emergency room, watching our dreams drain away on a paper gown. The ultrasound screen that should have shown our baby's heartbeat showed only emptiness. The technician's face said everything her words couldn't. David held my hand while the doctor explained what would happen next. I heard words like tissue and procedure, but all I could think was, we had names picked out. We had a due date circled on the calendar. We had hope. That was the first loss. The second came 18 months later. The third, just 6 months after. That. Each time, hope would creep back in like dawn after the longest night. Each time, It was ripped away before I could fully trust it. After the third miscarriage, I was diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, a name that sounded clinical and cold for something that felt like betrayal from the inside out. The doctor explained it like it was simple. Your ovaries have cysts. Your hormones are imbalanced. This is why you're struggling. But living with PCOS wasn't simple at all. My body became a stranger I didn't recognize. I gained 40 pounds in 6 months, no matter what I ate or how much I exercised. My face broke out like I was 15 again. Painful, angry cysts that no amount of expensive skincare could fix. Hair started growing in places it shouldn't, while the hair on my head thinned until I could see my scalp. My periods became a cruel joke. Sometimes 3 months would pass with nothing. Other times, I'd bleed for weeks on end, soaking through super tampons in an hour, planning my life around bathroom breaks. The mood swings were the worst part. I'd wake up feeling like myself. Then by afternoon, I'd be crying over a commercial or snapping at my husband for breathing too loudly. The hormones made me feel like I was drowning from the inside. Rage, sadness, and emptiness taking turns at the wheel. People saw a woman who wasn't doing enough. They didn't see the metformin that made me sick every morning. The injections that left purple bruises across my stomach and thighs. The blood draws every week to monitor hormone levels that never seem to cooperate. They didn't see me standing in the pharmacy at midnight, buying another pregnancy test because my symptoms were so erratic. I never knew if I was pregnant or just having another PCOS flare. The cashier, a teenage boy with kind eyes, always said good luck when I bought tests. I wondered if he knew those 2 words could either make my month or break my heart. They didn't see the early morning appointments where I sat alone in waiting rooms full of glowing pregnant women, their hands resting on round bellies while I clutched paperwork for another failed cycle. I learned to bring noise-canceling headphones to drown out the sound of other women's joy. They didn't see me holding my breath every time someone announced their news, calculating in my head how long they'd been trying versus how long I'd been waiting. My college roommate got pregnant on her honeymoon. My neighbor's oops baby came after a casual fling. Meanwhile, I tracked my cycle like a scientist and got nothing but negative tests and sympathetic looks. And slowly, quietly, depression crept in like water through cracks in a foundation. It started small, sleeping in a little later, canceling plans because I wasn't feeling well. But then it grew. I stopped returning phone calls, stopped cooking dinner, stopped caring if I showered or if the laundry piled up for weeks. The worst part wasn't the sadness, it was the numbness. I felt like I was watching my life through thick glass, everything muffled and distant. My husband would try to hold me, and I'd feel nothing. Friends would share good news, and I'd smile automatically while feeling completely empty inside. I started avoiding mirrors because I didn't recognize the woman looking back. Puffy face from the hormones, dark circles from the sleepless nights. Eyes that had lost their light. I stopped going to baby showers, making excuses that fooled no one. I avoided the grocery store aisles with diapers and formula. I learned to scroll past pregnancy announcements on social media before they could hit me like a punch to the chest. When people asked about our plans, I perfected a bright smile and a subject change so smooth they never saw the knife twisting in my chest. I felt hollow, like a woman-shaped outline with nothing substantial inside. Like everyone else had been given an instruction manual for life, and I'd been handed blank pages. The worst part was watching it destroy my marriage from the inside out. David tried everything. He'd bring me coffee in bed, suggest date nights, hold me when I cried. But I couldn't feel him anymore. The depression had built walls so thick that his love couldn't penetrate them. Our conversations became clinical. Did you take your medication? What did the doctor say? When's your next appointment? We stopped talking about dreams and started talking about schedules. The intimacy died first. Not just the physical part, though that became mechanical. timed around ovulation windows and hormone shots. But the emotional intimacy, the way we used to talk until midnight about everything and nothing, that disappeared too. I watched him trying to fix me, and I resented him for it. I resented his hope when mine was gone. I resented his patience when I had none left for myself. I resented that his body worked perfectly while mine felt like a broken machine. He never said it was my fault. He didn't have to. I said it enough for both of us. Some nights, I'd lie awake listening to him breathe and wonder if he'd be happier with someone else. Someone whose body could give him what mine couldn't. Someone who could laugh at his jokes instead of staring blankly at the ceiling. I stopped believing I was worth staying for. And while I was drowning in my own darkness, life around me kept moving forward. My younger sister Emma got pregnant with her third child. At her baby shower, she raised a glass and said with a laugh, "Some women were made to be moms, and some were just made to watch." Everyone laughed. Except me. She didn't know I'd miscarried again just days before. But I stayed quiet. I always did. Even when my mother-in-law cornered my husband at Christmas dinner saying, "Maybe it's time to think about starting over. You can remarry, you know. You deserve to be a father." Even when my own mother whispered to me in the kitchen later that night, "Honey, maybe you should give him the option of a second marriage. He deserves to be a father." Even when acquaintances suggested I was being too stressed or not trusting. God enough, or my personal favorite. Maybe you're trying too hard. I stopped believing in my own prayers. I stopped seeing myself as whole. I stopped believing I deserve love. From God, from David, from anyone. For a while I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't meant for this. Maybe some women are made to nurture, and others are just made to watch from the sidelines. Until one morning, I looked in the bathroom mirror after another negative test and saw someone I didn't recognize. A woman whose eyes had gone dull, whose smile had become a costume she wore for other people's comfort. A woman who was disappearing piece by piece while everyone watched. And I thought, this can't be my story. I won't let this pain be my identity. That day, something changed. Not because I suddenly felt better, but because I realized I was tired of feeling nothing at all. So I started writing. First in a journal that no one would ever see. Pages and pages of rage, grief, and questions I was afraid to ask out loud. Then in a blog that 3 people read, where I could be honest about the ugly parts nobody wanted to hear. I wrote about the miscarriages that felt like losing children I'd never meet. About the PCOS that made me feel like a woman with broken parts. About the weight gain that made me hide in loose clothes and avoid family photos. I hadn't appeared in a picture in over 2 years. I wrote about the sister who said I wasn't handling my infertility with enough grace. About the friends who stopped inviting me to things because my sadness was too heavy for their gatherings. About the baby shower invitations I'd receive and the creative excuses I'd invent to avoid them. I wrote about David finding me crying in the grocery store cereal aisle because they'd moved the pregnancy tests next to the baby food. About the way I'd cross the street to avoid pushing a stroller past our house. About the Mother's Day sermons that felt like salt in wounds that wouldn't heal. I wrote about the woman I was becoming in spite of it all, and something extraordinary happened. Women started responding. They shared their own stories. Miscarriages, infertility, PCOS, depression. They said I'd given voice to things they couldn't say out loud. You saved my marriage by helping me explain what I couldn't. You made me feel less alone in this hell. You reminded me I'm still a woman, even if my body doesn't work the way it should. In helping them heal, I began to remember who I was before the pain took over. I started therapy. Real therapy. Not just the fertility counseling that focused on managing disappointment. I began to untangle the grief from the shame, the medical condition from my identity as a woman. Slowly, carefully, I started letting David back in. I told him about the nights I'd planned to leave because I thought he'd be better off without me. About the times I'd stared at the medicine cabinet and wondered if disappearing would be easier than fighting another day. He cried. I'd never seen him cry about our infertility before. He'd always been strong for me, hopeful for me, patient while I fell apart. I thought I was losing you, he whispered. Not just to the depression, but completely. I didn't know how to reach you. We started over. Not the marriage, but the conversation. We talked about what we wanted our life to look like if children never came. We made plans that didn't revolve around pregnancy tests and doctor appointments. We remembered how to laugh together, how to touch each other without it being about making a baby, how to dream about things other than cribs and car seats. And then, when I'd finally stopped defining my worth by my ability to conceive, when I'd made peace with the possibility that motherhood might not be my path, when I'd learned to love the woman I was instead of mourning the mother I wasn't. 2 pink lines. Again, but this time felt different. This time, I didn't tell anyone for weeks. I held that secret like a butterfly, gently, carefully, not wanting to crush its wings. I didn't buy a pregnancy journal. I didn't call my parents at dawn. I didn't pick out names or circle due dates. I just breathed, one day at a time. The 8-week ultrasound showed a heartbeat, strong and steady. The technician smiled and said, "There's your baby." I burst into tears right there on the table, not from joy, but from relief so profound it felt like drowning in reverse. The 12-week appointment revealed a healthy baby, growing exactly as expected. The doctor handed me an ultrasound photo, and for the first time in 9 years, I let myself believe it might actually happen. Emma found out through our mother. She called me, her voice strangely flat. "Congratulations," she said. "I really hope this one works out." There was something bitter in her tone, like she'd been cheated out of a storyline where I remained. The tragic sister who couldn't have children. I didn't need her hope anymore. I had my own. 36 weeks later, I held my daughter in my arms. Perfect. Healthy. Mine. Emma visited the hospital 3 days later, holding flowers and wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked down at my baby and said quietly, "I guess God had a different plan after all." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. Fear that maybe she wasn't as special as she'd always believed. Fear that grace doesn't belong only to the people who've never had to wait for it. I smiled and said simply, "He always did. If no one's told you this today, listen to me carefully. You are not your diagnosis. You are not your empty arms. You are not the number of negative tests hidden in your bathroom drawer. You are not broken because your body works differently. You are not behind because your timeline doesn't match theirs. You are not less than because your path to motherhood or to wholeness looks different than what they expected. The women who whisper about your choices don't know about your midnight prayers. The family members who suggest you move on haven't carried your grief. The friends who distance themselves from your pain have never had to choose between hope and sanity, month after month, year after year. But here's what they'll never understand. You are not waiting for your life to begin. You are not incomplete until you become a mother. You are not a supporting character in someone else's story. You are the author of your own resurrection. Every day you choose to get up is an act of rebellion against the voices that say you're not enough. Every time you love yourself in a body that feels like it's betraying you is revolutionary. Every moment you refuse to shrink yourself to make others comfortable with your pain is pure power. Your struggle is not your punishment. Your waiting is not your waste. Your scars are not your shame. They are proof that you survived what was meant to break you. So keep walking through this fire. Keep believing in miracles that haven't shown up yet. Keep fighting for the woman you're becoming, not just the mother you hope to be. And don't ever, Not ever. Let anyone convince you that your story is over, just because it's taking longer to write than theirs. Because as long as your heart is beating, there are still pages left to fill. And honey, the best chapters, they're always worth the wait. If this story made something inside you remember its own strength, don't leave without sharing it with another woman who needs to hear it. Tell me in the comments, what did they say would define you, that you're still refusing to accept? And if you're still fighting battles in silence, I see you. I'm holding space for your breakthrough. Until next time, stay soft in a world that wants to make you hard. Stay hopeful in a timeline that makes no sense. And never apologize for the beautiful, brave way you refuse to give up on yourself. Your story isn't over. Your miracle is still coming. And you are already enough.